but as we were approaching the tree line, there was some, I don't remember the exact sequence of whether it was a knock that we heard, a rock clack, or a whoop type vocalization, but there was a combination of vocalizations and, knocking going on as we were approaching the tree line. Sarah and I are starting to get really nervous at this time because they don't sound like they're very far away. And I look off to my left, and it's about 100 feet away or so, maybe a little bit farther, maybe 115 feet. I see one coming up behind this tree, and when he was moving back and forth around the tree, he was like he was moving in like a really jerky motion, like fast twitch. There was enough shade within the forest, so I couldn't make out any facial features. I mean, it looked like a dark face, but I couldn't, it was far enough away along with the shadows that I couldn't make out like what his nose looked like, or, how big the brow ridge was and stuff like that. But I could see him moving around behind the tree. And then, I was trying to get my wife, Sarah, to look. I said, it's right there. If you just look right over there. But she wouldn't look. She was too afraid to. And, we were both terrified.
Back in February of 2015, I released episode 1 of a podcast called Bigfoot Crossroads with my co-host, Jonathan Brown. Years later, here we are. Bigfoot Crossroads is once again a podcast I've been doing for a while now. And once again, joining me all these years later is Jonathan Brown.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
I mean, even a year ago, would you have ever expected this to happen?
Not necessarily. What about you?
No, not really. Luckily, as fate would have it, we've reached back out to one another and started talking again, and here we are, man.
Yeah.
It's been a long time, I was just telling obviously I've mentioned the thermal footage a few times and talked about your property and stuff, nothing to any great detail or anything, but to me, you have one of the best Bigfoot stories out there. Just because, maybe it's because I know you so well, the type of person that you are, how your involvement kind of came to be in this whole thing, and the journey that you've been on and your outlook on everything. But just for the people that don't know your story, if you don't mind, kind of tell where you're from and how you ended up in the Bigfoot world.
Okay, well, I live on a reservation in Washington, in Southwest Washington, and it was in 2012. I was coming outside to get something out of my car, and there's kind of a funny scent in the air, and it smelled kind of like skunk, just a little bit different, but I was just listening outside for just moments after smelling that. And then I hear a whistle from one side of the property, and then a responding whistle from the other side. And that kind of led into, us, my brother Ben and I spending a lot of time outside just sitting by the fire at night. And then, things kind of unfolded from there.
Escalated a bit.
Yeah.
So if I remember correctly, the house that you're in was your dad's house?
Yes.
And never any talk of Bigfoot or anything like that as a kid or in the area or anything?
I remember hearing him talking about some whistles that he had heard, but I think he was attributing it to a bird or something. and that's such a vague memory of him telling that to me. I mean, he's passed on, since 2009, and so I don't remember exactly, what it was. He probably only did hear a bird at the time. I don't know, but he wasn't spending any time outside or anything that night.
And it wasn't something that had really been on your mind previous to these incidents or anything?
I mean, I wasn't into Bigfoot like I am now, but I've always been interested in it. And there's, different people on the reservation that have, told stories throughout my entire life that I've believed. And as far as the property that we live on right now, it actually used to be my grandfather's property as well. And he had a smokehouse where he smoked fish. And I was told by a family member that one time on the property, he had a bunch of fish that he was smoking, and then all the fish were taken out, and there was a large footprint outside of the smokehouse. And it seems like somebody said that like another fish was like a dead fish was left outside of it, not like any of the fish that had been smoking, but like a day or two later, like a fish had been left outside of it. I don't know how accurate that story is, because it's not like a close family member that told me it.
Yeah,
it's a story that I heard 10 years ago, so maybe there's some half truths to it, maybe not. My grandpa did have stories of like seeing Sasquatch when he was fishing down by the river though too, and my grandma would say that she didn't believe him and that he was making stuff up.
Whenever you heard the sounds and stuff, did you instantly recognize like that's probably a Sasquatch, or what did you think?
Based on the smell, when I came outside, I couldn't identify the scent that I was smelling. I mean, like I said, it was similar to a skunk, just a little bit different. And so my brain kind of was going there beforehand. I mean, as soon as I smelled it, because it wasn't really fitting in a box of like an animal that I knew of. And then hearing the whistle from one side of the property and then the whistle from the other side of the property, I was thinking if it was a person, they're an idiot, because that's a good way to get shot.
Right. When was the big aha moment for you and your family and everything, where it was no longer a mystery of what was going on?
Well, after that night in particular, when I had the whistles going back and forth, me and my brother Ben did spend quite a bit of time outside at night, and there would be different things that we would hear. Some distant vocalizations. I don't remember specifically which ones, because there's been so many, but we've heard rocks being banged together, and what sounded like, when people talk about tree knocks, what sounds like wood on wood. If it is wood on wood, I don't know, but things like that. And it was in 2013, April of 2013, that my wife Sarah and I, we suspected that they were around, and we went and put some food out in the forest. I don't know, just leftover scraps and stuff like that.
Right.
Probably a stupid idea. It could, attract other predators. I'm not even saying that, it was Sasquatch that we were feeding, but it was just an attempt. We didn't know anything about Bigfoot, and that's what we were trying to do. But as we were approaching the tree line, there was some, I don't remember the exact sequence of whether it was a knock that we heard, a rock clack, or a whoop type vocalization. But there was a combination of vocalizations and knocking going on as we were approaching the tree line, and we barely get inside of it, and Sarah and I are starting to get really nervous at this time, because they don't sound like they're very far away. And I look off to my left, and it's about 100 feet away or so, maybe a little bit farther, maybe 115 feet away. And I see one coming up behind this tree, and the first thing that really stood out to me was like how like conical shaped its head was. I mean, it wasn't. It was it was a pretty pronounced, cone of a head that he had. And when he was moving back and forth around the tree, he was like he was moving in like a really jerky motion, like fast twitch. And it was there was enough shade within the forest, so I couldn't make out any facial features. I mean, it looked like a dark face, but I couldn't. It was far enough away, along with the shadows, that I couldn't make out like what his nose looked like, or how 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 big the brow ridge was and stuff like that. But I could see him moving around behind the tree, and then I was trying to get my wife Sarah to look. I said, it's right there. If you just look right over there. But she wouldn't look. She was too afraid to. And we were both terrified at the time. And I wasn't staring at it like I was trying to be challenging towards him. I would kind of look in an intimidated type fashion, where I would look at him in the corner of my eye for just a few seconds at a time, and then kind of look away. Because I, not being that far away from me, I don't know what he's going to try to do. There's very little and still very little that I still know about them. But I was pretty afraid. And the last time that I glanced over at him, he got really low to the ground, to the point where at first he was squatting really low to the ground. Then I'm pretty sure he had to have been like laying on the ground. But that was the last I looked over there, and we got out of there.
And what time of day was it?
It was the first week in April of 2013, and I would say that it's right around sunset at that time. So I'm not really sure what time sunset is in April, but I would assume probably around 7 o'clock or so.
Yeah. So it wasn't like completely dark or anything, but the sun was.
Oh, no. When I was looking at him, there was sunlight that was coming through the trees. So that's why I'm saying like it was close to sunset, because there was some sunlight that was coming through. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that even though I couldn't make out any facial features because of a lot of the shadows, there was some sunlight coming through, like that was hitting, parts of his hair. And the hair on his back was like really clumped together. I don't know if it was dirty or oily or what, but I remember it being clumped together. And the hair that the sun was hitting was kind of a reddish brown.
Have you encountered like bears in the wild?
Not that close. I mean, I've been fishing on the river that's around us, and I've seen like a bear cub along the shore. I've seen bear cross the road in front of my vehicle not far away on the other side of the reservation. But I know there's bears around that come around our property, because I see bear scat pretty often. I've just personally never seen a bear out around our property before. I know they're there. I just haven't seen one.
I was just curious to see if you could compare the feeling to something. You were talking about the fear factor, and I was just curious if it was similar to like if someone encountered a bear out in the wild.
The bears that I've seen, it's been, a very limited amount that I've seen, but it seems as if they're always, kind of scared and running off, like kind of startled, and they just want to get out of sight,
Yeah.
When I was looking at this thing, I just had no idea what it was thinking, what it was going to do, but it definitely looked as if there was, it looked as if it was a lot more intelligent than a bear, just by the way it was observing us,
You're also with your wife, so I would imagine there would be some, instinct about concern for her safety as well. And this isn't a situation where you guys were necessarily like out on a Bigfoot expedition. I mean, this is like literally in the yard at your house that this is taking place.
Yeah, just outside of our property. I mean, I did have a pistol with me, and like when I saw it, it wasn't like I was thinking about shooting a Sasquatch at the time or anything like that. But I did have a pistol, and when I saw it, like my hand, it wasn't like I couldn't function or anything. I could, and my hand was on my pistol, but I wasn't planning on taking it out unless I absolutely had to.
So after that incident happened, like, did activity at the house continue?
So that was in April, and it seemed as if it seemed that, and when we had first, become aware that stuff was going on occasionally outside, was when I came out to get something out of the car that I had started out the story with, and that was I think it was in October or November of 2012. So between then and April of 2013 is when I had had the daylight sighting, and it seemed like after May, it seemed like from May until that following September or late August, like there was what I don't know that there wasn't anything around at the time, but it seemed like as if if they were around, they were a lot more quiet. I mean, almost between May and the end of summer, mm-hmm. almost or late summer, almost next to no activity.
Has that pattern kind of continued through the years?
It kind of I've always told people that, but Chris Spencer, he came out here and set up a wildlife acoustics SM4 recorder that he started sometime in late March. And even when I told him, like, I didn't think that there'd be a few times that there was like questionable stuff that would happen in the early to midsummer, but nothing like definitive where you knew for sure. And he's been reviewing audio, and between then and throughout this summer, he's been picking up stuff in summertime, and not necessarily all that close, a little bit distant. And so that could be why during those months it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of stuff that happens around our property. And maybe in the fall they head this way for a different reason. I don't really have the answer to that, but even this summer, like, it did seem like I don't recall hearing much this summer at all.
Has your wife or your kids had a sighting at your house and experiences and stuff? I mean, obviously I know Sarah has, but for the benefit of the people listening and don't know the stories and stuff, have they experienced things as well?
My daughter Chloe, this must have been about 2 years ago. She was bringing the dog inside. We have a German Shepherd, and she said that over by one of our apple trees, she saw what she describes as a Bigfoot running away towards the trees from the apple tree as soon as she walked out. And I believe her, because Chloe's not even into Bigfoot at all. And it's possible she could have been mistaken it for something else. I just don't have a reason to discredit her. I mean, she's not out telling her story to people or anything like that. That's the one time she told me.
I mean, what else would she mistake for a Bigfoot running away from the apple tree,
I mean, if there was a human that was possibly like snooping around looking to steal something, that's always a possibility, but I don't think that's what she was describing.
I mean, again, you live, on a reservation. It's a pretty small community. I think everybody knows you. I think somebody would be pretty damn stupid to like be snooping around on your property like that. I don't think anybody would do that.
Yeah. I mean, you can never you can never say that nobody would, because there's always somebody dumb enough to do something. But yeah, I otherwise I don't have a reason to believe that anybody was around, on that particular night.
So when did the infamous thermal footage happen in the grand scheme of things?
Now, that would have been in October. That was October 30th of 2013. And Ben and I, we were outside by the fire, and there was cattle that was behind us, and there were some of them were getting shipped to another location, when they back in those big cow trailers and start loading them up. And so there was some of the cows had, family members that were missing, and they were just like putting on a show that night, just like crying and bellowing like really loud, in a way that you could only surmise that a cow is crying or upset about something, bellowing, just making a lot of noise. And so it was loud that night, but there was one time where Ben and I hear something that sounded like tapping that was coming from where the thermal was taking. And I had got out the thermal camera, and I'm looking over in that direction, and I'm seeing like lower to the ground at first, like this human shaped looking head, looking nothing like the other cows in that, were around at the time. And it's laying on the ground at that point, and I'm trying to we had just been lent that camera, and so I was not that familiar with the device, and I was trying to figure out how to get it to record. And by the time I'm trying to record, it's changed position to where it's, now when I'm looking at it, there's this berm that drops down, and so half of like the lower half of the body is below this ridge, so you're just seeing it peeking up from the chest, shoulders, head of the ridge. And I'm thinking that I'm taking video at that time, but what I'm doing is I'm taking snapshots. And so when I realized I wasn't recording, my brother Ben took the camera and he was messing with it, and then he got it recording, and that's how that had happened. And I don't know if there was what the reason for, as far as the camera stopping. I don't know if it was the batteries that we were using, or somebody, I think David Ellis had said that there was an auto shutdown feature on the camera. I don't know if there was an auto shutdown feature on it, or if it was the batteries. But at 2 minutes and 20 seconds, it stops recording. And then when it stopped recording, and by the time we got the camera on again, I mean, the creature was gone.
So the camera was lent to you, and it was lent to you for the specific purpose of trying to get footage of something if you had the opportunity, right?
Yes.
I mean, this footage was a big deal whenever it came out. I still think it is a big deal. I think it's a tremendous piece of evidence. And a lot of people have spent a lot of time analyzing it, coming to your property, checking out where it happened and everything. And as far as I know of, anybody that's actually visited the property and, looked at the area itself, where the thing was at, all that, I mean, everybody's kind of on board with, yeah, that's a Bigfoot. I can't think of anybody that's really, obviously you have the internet people who don't really know anything that are just like, oh, that's a cow, because there is a cow in the footage at some point.
Yeah.
But I mean, some of the comparison shots and everything, that thing was massive, and it doesn't look anything like a cow. And it, not that you have to defend it or anything, but can you kind of briefly give the reason why it's not a cow?
Well, for one, like through a thermal camera, a cow's ears are going to light up. They're going to show, a thermal camera is going to show heat. And so it's still going to show heat on a cow's ears. This head is not anything like a cow's head. And it's one solid subject. It's not a it's not multiple animals that group together. There's been people that have, suggested that that's what it is. The problem is, I actually didn't know this until there was this guy who had a YouTube channel. His name was Bigfoot Tony, and he was playing with the speeds on it. And it seems like when Ben and I have it on film there, it seems as if it's hardly moving at all until you actually play with the speeds. Then you can see, movement and it moving around very, very subtly.
What do you think it was doing? Just checking you guys out or checking out the cattle or what?
I really don't know. I personally think that the cows were making so much noise that it drew its attention over there and like, hey, what's going on over here? Why are these guys? I'm going to go see what these guys are fussing about. That's just my opinion. I don't know.
Was there any like tracks or anything where it was at?
Yeah, there was two that were pretty good. I mean, good for, good enough to cast, but I don't remember how many of them were actually like visible. There might have been, some other smudges where it's like that's not really worth anything. But that's kind of where our brain was at the time, because we didn't know that, oh, you need to like cast everything that you got. So we got some casting material. We ended up only having enough to do one of them, I believe, or we just chose to do the cleanest one out of all of them. But we did take picture, or Sarah did, my wife, she did take pictures, of where the prints were. So there's the before and after, and we still have the cast of, where it was standing on the thermal video.
I don't remember if we've even ever talked about it really, but I mean, you hear a lot of reports and stuff, a lot of the investigations that I did where it was people who had these things coming up on their property, you had them messing around with things on the property itself. Sometimes it would, they would take something and then bring it back or move it in the yard or something, or slap the side of the house. Did you experience anything like that?
I didn't experience any like, I mean, there has been some things that are weird, but it's hard to attribute it completely to Bigfoot. Like, I mean, let's say like one of our trees or something that snapped. I mean, there could be other explanations for that. I'm talking about like small trees that are planted.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of difficult to determine if that actually was by a Bigfoot. But there was I've heard a lot of people talk about like in active areas about having like their house tapped on or slapped and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I never noticed that until it must have been a year and a half or 2 years ago. I was dead asleep at midnight, 12:30, sometime around then. And I just hear this bang on the side of the house. And I got up, grabbed my pistol, and go outside. I'm expecting to see like the garbage cans outside, like tipped over or something, like some type of animal messing with it. There was nothing disturbed on the outside of the house. I mean, it was just one bang on the side of the house, and that was it. Aside from that, my kids have talked about hearing tapping on their windows at night, and it's gotten to the point where, I mean, this was a couple of years ago, and I mean, it was to the point where they were afraid at times, not constantly, but when it would happen, it would get them spooked out.
Has the dog ever picked up on anything? I mean, I know you can't ask it or anything, but has it ever alerted that you might be kind of suspicious that it was alerting to a Bigfoot?
Earlier this year, I was sitting outside and I had a fire going, and there was, I don't remember what the vocalization was, but there was a vocalization that we heard, and then he's a big German Shepherd. He ran to the back door of the house, and like it was like he didn't want any smoke. He just wanted to go inside.
He was out.
Yeah. I mean, no barking, nothing. He just didn't want to have anything to do with that.
Like, wasn't there another like thermal signature or something that you guys saw out in the field?
Yeah, so we're going down this trail. It's the same area that I saw one in the daylight. We're going down that trail, and as we get down there, it smells like it's like a smell that smells like garbage, and it must be about 1 o'clock in the morning. And me and Ben and Shane are just staying still for a moment, and Shane's looking around with the thermal camera, and then he's like, "Oh, hey, I think I see something behind a tree over here." And then he's describing like a big head that's peeking out, and no, he's looking at that for, it seems as if it was seconds or so. I don't remember how long it was, but then there's a creek down there, and all of a sudden there's just like, it sounded like huge objects were getting thrown into the creek, and we were just like, oh, we're getting pretty worked up. I think I was more afraid than everybody else in the group was, and because we were in the wooded area, Shane's seeing something behind the tree, and then we're hearing this splashing down by the creek, which it sounded like something was trying to divert our attention over that way. But I just wanted to get out of the tree line and get into the open field where I don't have to worry about, is something right around the next bend that I'm not expecting, I mean, I know we're going there to, try to see if we could see a Sasquatch, but it's when they're that close at night, it does seem kind of scary.
I mean, do you feel that they're like a predator, some sort of predator? Do you feel threatened by them, or?
I don't feel like they've ever tried to do anything to like hurt us or anything like that. I don't. I think that something like that could happen with any animal if you tested your limits. But as far as other stories on the reservation goes, I've heard of them throwing rocks at people while they're fishing. I've heard that more than one time, probably 3 or 4 times.
Have you talked to anybody on the reservation that's also had a sighting?
I've talked to quite a few people that have seen them. That was one of the first things that I did after seeing one in the daylight was I was thinking, man, based on the time that I spend outside, this other guy spends like all of his time outside, fishing, hunting, everything. And I was like, and he just lives up the road from me. So I was like, I know that he had experiences with him if he spends that much more time outside than I do. And I just started asking him about it, and yeah, he would tell me his stories, and they seem believable.
I'm just wondering how long these things have lived in that area, within like the community like that and everything. I mean, I know you and I years ago have like talked about all this stuff, like how they possibly travel around your property and everything.
Uh-huh.
And it's just kind of a really unique environment. There seems to be like a lot of history with them in the area. I believe it was it in the 80s whenever that deputy sheriff or somebody found the tracks over there?
Yeah, over in Porter Creek, and that's about 10 miles away as far as the crow flies from where we live. I mean, I don't think that that's out of range to, I mean, not necessarily, that's a long time ago, being in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And what seemed to be, adult Sasquatch footprints. So I wouldn't even know if like those ones would still be alive at this point. But one would think that what we've experienced around our property is there's at least a possibility like you're dealing with Sasquatch that were maybe related to the report from Porter Creek and around that area back in the 80s.
Everybody always asks the same question, what do you think they are? But like, does their behavior come across as an animal or a human to you?
I don't know. I mean, we have, there's been things that I've heard when Ben and I have, been outside back in 2013, like by the fire, where it sounded like there was some type of deaf talking going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they're talking, that seems like it's it sounds like it's getting pretty close to human, you know. I mean, obviously a lot more primitive, but I mean, if they have some type of language that they're able to communicate with, it seems like they're of a higher intelligence than, you know, just a gorilla, you know.
What was the most recent thing that you attribute to them that's happened on your property?
In the last couple of months, there's been some, you know, distant things that I've heard. Some maybe even closer than others. But Chris got some recordings in August that he emailed to me, and you know, they're from our property, and it sounds like some type of yelling going on in the field behind us, kind of by the river, and it's accompanied with some tree knocks as well. I thought that was pretty interesting.
If you walk out your back door, how far away is the recorder that he has set up?
Probably 300 yards.
Man, doesn't that spook you out a little bit? Like these recordings that, you know, it's picking up, and like the vocalizations and stuff is like, I mean, it's right there, you know? Like whenever I was actively going out in the field at the peak of my research career, whatever you want to call it, I was driving like 3 hours away from my house. And you're talking about like, yeah, I walk out my back door and it's just like right there, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be unnerving, I would think.
Yeah. And the thing about back in 2013 is there would be times, like even on work nights, that I would stay up really late, like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And it seemed like around midnight, like 11:30 to midnight, it seems like the odds were better of something happening, you know, as it got a little bit later.
Yeah. And
I simply haven't been staying up that late anymore. And that's, you know, why, I mean, you just get too burned out doing that. But there was a good solid year that I was staying up a long time.
I remember back whenever we used to both be staying up late at night on the phone together, like a couple of little high school girls, and like listening to stuff like over the phone, like being on the phone with you and then like howling and stuff in the background.
Yeah, I remember specifically, I was on the phone with you one time, and I mean, this wasn't there's an old house that's on our property. It's not the house we live in, but we use it for storage and stuff. And I was sitting at the gazebo, and I hear a slap on that house, and I was like, "Did you hear that?" And you're like,
Yeah.
But I remember that, and I remember talking with you, and you know, there was some other things that I believe you heard over the phone too.
I can't remember what it was, but there's something triggering in my memory about the barn. It's not your barn. It's not on your property, but it's close by, I think.
Yeah. One time, my friend Kirk and Wes Germer and Shannon LeGros was over, and we took a walk over there, and there was quite a bit of rainfall that was coming down that night. So at the time it was our tribe's barn, so it wasn't like we were trespassing or anything like that. Like we could be in there. But they had just used it for like storing like heavy equipment and stuff at the time, I believe. So we were just standing under there, and because it's, you know, raining hard, we're in that barn, and I'm not attributing this to Bigfoot, and I'm not saying that it's impossible that there wasn't some person with a headlamp. But as we're in the barn, Kirk says, "Hey, what's that light that's heading towards us right now?" And it looks as if it's just a white light that's coming towards us. And so I'm assuming it's like somebody on a headlamp, but I'm thinking, like, what are they doing at 1 o'clock in the morning with, you know, a headlamp on, you know, coming through the woods? And Kirk's the one with the thermal camera at that time, and so it kept coming towards us. Then it just dove towards the ground. Kirk was saying like he was the first one to see the light that was coming towards us, and he was just saying that there was nothing on thermal as he was looking at it. Like, he couldn't see anything on thermal. He could see the white light, but when he's looking through the thermal imager, there's nothing. Like, he should be able to see it, and that's kind of going down like a rabbit hole. I'm not saying that it was anything. Maybe we were looking at a person with a white headlamp. That's possible, but it was weird that they weren't detected through the thermal imager, because there wasn't a lot of in that particular area. There wasn't a lot of like underbrush that I would think would be enough to diffuse the thermal imager.
And where did they go?
Don't know. Like everything like stopped right there, like as far as the light goes. And then on the other side of the building, we hear this smack as we're in there, and then that's when we started getting a little bit jumpy, and we got out of there. But I don't think that I don't know what any of that was, but that's just, that story's been told before. It's not necessarily my favorite story to tell, but that happened, and there could be a perfectly logical explanation as to what all of that was. But I do think it's possible that weird things happen as well.
Right.
And so I don't think that we were seeing like I don't attribute that Sasquatch to that light to a Sasquatch like hatching out of a portal or anything like that.
But I mean, you have seen what people would call orbs or strange lights in the area. I mean, I'm not attributing that is necessarily connected to Bigfoot or anything, but I mean, it is definitely something weird. I mean, maybe it was a person. I don't know.
There's been as far as the strange lights that like I don't even know what an orb is, but like a strange light. There was one time I was outside and I could see this red light that was just one red light that was moving over by the tree line. It's not impossible that what I saw wasn't somebody with a red headlamp on that was like looking to pick mushrooms or something like that. That's a possibility, but it was weird seeing that red light moving through there. So there's that, and on another time I seen this a couple of this orangish reddish light on the hillside that I've never seen before. It could have been some strange natural human light over and off in the distance, but it was just weird. I'd never seen it before.
There was a strange coyote pelt or something.
Yeah, did I send you pictures of that at the time?
I don't remember if you sent me pictures or not. I'm trying to remember like everything. Like, what was the story behind that?
Well, I mean, it was just in an obscure spot on the barbed wire fence, that's on the border of our property, and I just happened to be walking through there. It wasn't like it was in a spot that stood out or anything, but it was a coyote pelt, just like the fur, attached.
Yeah, not a body of a coyote, not like a coyote got caught up in the barbed wire fence.
No, not a body. No, as if it was skinned, and it was just wrapped around the barbed wire fence. And I just thought that was weird, because that's not something that's like funny. It's not something that's going to get my attention. Like, if you wanted to get my attention, do something to weird me out, put that on my windshield,
Right. And that's creepy, dude.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that.
So you've, gone to other places besides your property. Have you had anything weird happen somewhere else?
Oh yeah, definitely in the Cascades I have. Um, there's been I've been on trips with friends in the Olympics where other people have had stuff happen, but when you're spread out at different camps and stuff like that, everybody's off doing their own thing. There's a good chance that you're not going to be a part of any activity that's had on that trip. In the Cascades, there's a place that we go to, and yeah, there's quite a few things that have happened throughout the years. Good vocalizations, really loud knocks, and it has a good history of reports throughout the years as well.
I mean, I know a few of the people that you go out there with, and they all have stories from there as well that are pretty crazy. It sounds like a pretty active area.
Yeah, it's been active for a long time.
Why do you think, like, you have like that spot, right? And it seems like a lot of the stuff that happens there is like loud, really bold stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the behavior around your house. Like, why do you think like the differences in behavior? Like, do you think they're just trying to like sneak around or something where you're at, or are they more used to being around people where you are compared to out there? Or
I don't know. I would kind of think that in that area in the Cascades that they would feel, and this is just my thought, I would think that they would feel to certain areas like a little more entitled, like, hey, nobody camps here. You guys shouldn't be camping here, and that's just my thought. So I think that's why some of the behavior can come across as a little more bold on their part.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that this isn't anything that's groundbreaking or anything like that. I would imagine that they probably sound similar in different regions, but the whoops, like the whoop, like that kind of vocalization, they basically sound close to identical from the whoops that I've heard here and over there.
Do you have people still coming to your property and investigating, other than just setting up the audio recorders?
No, I mean, as far as sometimes we'll have friends come over for a camp out or and a barbecue and things like that. But other than that, I mean, it isn't like before.
Not that you ever tried to like, put the limelight on your property or anything with it. But I just know that, like you're saying before, there's a lot of people always trying to come to your property and investigate and stuff. And I just wondered if you had kind of squashed that and eased off from that.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely held off on that. But the reason that we allowed some people to come out beforehand was because we have when you're saying, hey, I got a thermal video and we got these audio recordings that we believe are Sasquatch and stuff like that, and you got enough of them, that's kind of big talk. So you kind of have to have people verify that you're not just full of crap and that there's legitimacy to it. So that was the whole intention of doing that in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, there's not too many people that are in a situation like you where they've actually faced the fire of the Bigfoot community, which can be a difficult task. It causes a lot of problems because, the first thing people do is try to pick it apart and dissect it and call you a liar and call you a hoaxer and everything else. And that's, to me, one of the interesting things about your thermal footage is that it's held up to scrutiny with anybody that's actually looked into it and actually taken the time to verify any of it.
One story, the guy who had the cattle that was here, he would lease out the field from the tribe behind us, and when he would be tending to his cattle and stuff, he told me that one time he was down by the river and he saw something brown that was in the river, and it was bent over with its head underwater, and it was hairy and brown. And I was like, oh, was it a bear, deer, elk? No. It was on two legs, and it was bent over with its head in the water.
On two legs.
Yeah, and this guy wasn't like into Bigfoot or anything like that by any means.
I mean, how deep is the river right there?
He described it being in the summertime. So I mean, there's probably some areas where, you know, there's still deep pockets.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seemed like he said it was like up to its waist, and it just had its head underwater. Like I don't know what it would be doing with its head underwater. I'm sure there's a good reason for that, but I just can't think of it.
I mean, could it have been trying to fish or catch a fish or something?
That's the only thing that makes sense to me, because it doesn't seem like a very smart way to take a drink of water by putting your head on it.
I know this woman here in Oklahoma, and very early on in the podcast, I had her and her sister come on, and her sister had a sighting of what I believe was a Bigfoot while she was fishing. But like the one that she saw was underwater and raised up from beneath the surface. Like she never saw it like get in the water or anything. She just saw it kind of bob up and then go back under, and she freaked out and left. And this area where she was fishing at was a river where they do a lot of noodling, which is hand fishing, like catching catfish with their hands, like diving under the water and catching fish. And I wondered if like, is it possible that they had seen like people doing that there and that's what they were doing? It was just so weird. So like, I wonder, you know, if this was like another case where maybe it was fishing.
It could have been. That's one of the first things that I was thinking of, because it's not like it lost its ring and it's looking for that or anything. You know?
I mean, there's just like, you know, you were talking about your grandfather's story, but there's like lots of stories of like them taking like fish from fishermen and stuff, especially out where you live.
Yeah, I've heard one of the fishermen telling me about going to check his net and seeing a Sasquatch at his net pulling fish out of it. And I don't remember what he said that he did afterwards, if he left or if it ran off or what happened. But there's that story in particular, and I've heard of them doing that on other reservations as well. But I think that's the only one that I'm familiar with that they've done on our reservation. I mean, if they've done it once, I'm sure they do it all the time, because I mean, it's not very hard to watch somebody fish with a net and like, oh, you just have to pull the fish out of there. Cool.
Yeah.
One story that I forgot about was, I can't remember if it was at the beginning of 2022 or if it was the beginning of 2021, but I just remember it was early in the year. I can't remember how far in advance that he said it was. I thought it was a couple of weeks, but I go to the gas station, and it's on the reservation. It's really busy, and there's a lot of people in a long line in there. And the guy that was working in there, he's close to my age, and he starts talking. I'm at the counter, and he goes, "Hey, I saw one of those creepy black things cross the road by your house a couple of weeks ago." I was kind of embarrassed because he's talking about this in public, you know, and there's people around. And I was like, all right, well, so you mean like a Sasquatch? He's like, yeah. And I was like, what was it doing? He goes, it just crossed the road and went in the trees over by your place. And he's like, it was all black. And I was like, was it big? And he goes, no, it wasn't that big. It was close to our size.
And that was crossing the road by your house? Like the road that goes in front of your house?
Yeah, there's a culvert over there, and he said that's where it was by.
Has that area across from your house been developed at all?
No.
Because, you know, I always thought that was a good spot over there.
Uh-huh. No, there's not much in the general area that's changed over the years.
Wow.
I would think that a Bigfoot would, if there was a whole lot of changes, and if you were a Bigfoot, I would think that would, be something that would maybe make you think like, hey, it's getting a little too populated here. Maybe we should not come here so often. Whatever. I don't know.
I mean, and maybe that's the reason that they've hung around there for so long, because it is a reservation. So you don't have like a whole lot of like booming growth in population or, clear cutting and new buildings being built and stuff like that over the years, like you do in regular society.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's private land that's around us. And, it's not like there's a big housing development anywhere close.
You've got the audio recorder on your property, but something that, I'm sure people listening would want to know, do you have video cameras or trail cams or anything set up on your property trying to get footage of one?
Well, Chris Spencer has a contraption that he set up. It's something without like giving too much detail.
Yeah.
Like I don't really know that. I don't really know that he wants. I don't really think that I could speak to his setup that he has going on. But he does have something that he's trying out.
So you have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And you've posted some of the stuff from your property on there, but talk a little bit about the documentary that you made.
So when we were talking about that area in the Cascades that we go, that's a lot of those stories are, from then. And it was when I made that, like we go out camping quite a few times per year at that particular spot, and it isn't like some. I mean, just like our property, it's not like just because you go outside, it's not like something's going to happen every night.
Right.
But there's certain places like our property and that place in the Cascades where you definitely have better odds than other places. Over the years, there's some stories from there that I wanted to share, and it took me a long time, but I finally did put up a 35-minute little documentary on, some things that we considered interesting, and some vocalizations that were captured. Kirk actually got a couple really good recordings that are on there. Kirk Brandenburg.
Do you plan on doing future documentaries?
I would like to. I mean, when I go out camping, I take video of stuff that I think looks cool and stuff like that. But I mean, it's just a matter of if there's enough evidence that gets built up from different trips that we take. It's a strong possibility.
Have you ever thought about making a documentary about your story and your property and everything?
Yeah, I have, and I've started it before. I've stopped. But yeah, that is one of the things that I plan to do, so that everything can. I think everything would be put into a better context for everybody, and they'd have a better understanding of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, because it's an interesting story, and it's that's what I try to express to people, that like, for instance, the other night I was a guest on Bigfoot Society with Jeremiah Byron. And it's kind of weird whenever I'm in the guest seat, because I'm telling my stories and, people want to hear the experiences and everything, but that stuff took place over a very long amount of time, and you're just getting it condensed down into an hour. And I feel that your property is the same way. There's so much stuff that's happened and been experienced at your house and around your house, but it's over an extremely large amount of time. And I mean, it's still ongoing. It's still something that's happening now. So to condense the story down and put it sort of in a sequence of events and timeline, I think would be really interesting and beneficial.
Yeah, and as I was telling you before you started recording, I had just talked with a guy yesterday who was, telling me his Bigfoot stories that, he had from the last year or so, just on another area of the reservation. And we're not like these special Indians on the reservation who, get these. They're not. It's not like we have visitations or anything like that. Like they pass through from time to time. There's other places on the reservation where other people got stories as well. So it's not, for our reservation, it's not that special. There's quite a few people that have seen them before.
So what's the name of your YouTube channel if people want to check it out?
It's a Salish Sasquatch.
Salish Sasquatch. Say that 6 times fast. I guess you probably could. All right, man. I appreciate you coming on and talking to me, of course. I'm glad that our friendship has been rekindled.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. I'm definitely going to have you on in the future. We can share some more exciting stuff from the Brown property. And if you've encountered a Bigfoot or something else you can't explain, send me an email at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out my website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to social media, merchandise, all the past episodes, everything you need, all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.